Hello, my happy shiny puppies in training. This is Melody Fletcher, and I teach the law of attraction and the technology of reality creation to highly intellectual overthinkers just like you in a way that actually makes some freaking sense for a change, right? Okay, so today we're going to tackle a really, really big topic and one that's been requested many, many, many times. And that is the topic of parenting. So I want to give you a tiny little disclaimer before we start, and that is that I personally do not actually have children in the traditional sense that I have little kids running around or I squeeze them out of my hoo-ha. Yeah. But I am quite paternal and have mentored many people and have been sort of that energy has come through in many ways, and of course I have coached quite a few parents. I really enjoy coaching parents, by the way, because usually the payoff is so quick and so powerful, because when you shift your energy, your kids will mirror that crap back to you so fast. They will mirror back your crap, but they will mirror back the shift as well, just as easily. They're instantaneous, and it's amazing. Kids and dogs, by the way. Yeah. Take that as you like it. And so before you get into the comment section and kind of go, well, what do you know? You don't know anything about parenting because you're not a parent. I'm going to say the same thing to you that I say to anybody who wants to say anything about one of my videos, if it hits a little bit of a nerve. And parenting is not a volatile issue at all, right? A non-parent telling other parents how to raise their kids. There's no danger in that at all. But here's what I say to that is take the bits that resonate with you, that make sense for you, that you think are going to help you, and leave the rest. If I say something that you don't agree with, just leave it, disregard it. That wasn't for you. Yeah. If you're watching this video, there's probably some kind of manifestation in there. Well, it's definitely a manifestation for you, but hopefully a helpful one, or maybe it's just here to piss you off. But in any case, it is your responsibility to sort out what that means to you and why you've manifested it. So now that we've got the little disclaimer out of the way, I will give you what I have learned about parenting and what I have learned from working with parents, and what I have paid attention to as it came through me, as I am the delivery mechanism for the wisdom of a person's higher self. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is just a really kind of general mindset, and then we'll get into more concrete things, but a really general mindset, which is that if you want to be a awake parent, if you want to be a conscious parent, if you want to be a 5D, a fifth dimensional parent, let's call it that, you have to deal with your own shit. You have to deal with your own shit. You have to understand that what your kids are mirroring back to you, what you're experiencing of them, your experience is your manifestation. It is your manifestation. You are not forcing your kids to be little dicks, because they can be. Let's be really honest about that. So when they're getting on your last nerve, you're not forcing them to do that. That's not your manifestation, but your experience of it is your manifestation. So if your last nerve is about to blow up, it is up to you to figure out, why does it upset me so much? And what about that upsets me? And maybe, when else have I felt this? And go through that whole process, because it is about you cleaning up your own energy and not sort of carrying out your own vibrational work on their backs, so to speak. Yeah, which I'm sure your parents did to you and their parents did to them. But we're going to break this cycle. That's why I'm making this video. Yeah. And so there's a few concepts on how to do that. That I'm going to use some language here that isn't mine, so that it's easier to sort of integrate, and you can Google it and you can find lots of information on it. So you want to stay away from the idea of punishment and discipline. That is sort of one really huge thing, one huge mindset to adopt, is it isn't about punishment or discipline. Yeah. Punishment comes from a place of I am the authority and you respect my authority. And if you don't respect my authority, if you don't do what I want you to do, I will punish you. And you might think that you're teaching your kids real world consequences, but all you're really teaching them is powerless. You're just passing your powerlessness on to them. Now, this does not mean that there don't have to be consequences in your home, but not punishment consequences. Yeah, because that's really just a power struggle. And that's you not being in your power, trying to gain power by manipulating your children through fear into doing what you want them to do. Now, isn't that about the ugliest way that I could have stated that? But that is absolutely what's going on in that kind of power struggle. Yeah. Discipline is usually kind of about the same thing. It's about the punishment I will inflict upon you, or someone else will inflict upon you. Still about punishment, still about fear, still about manipulation, still about powerlessness. Yeah. And I'm trying to get you to be able to use your willpower to do something that you really don't want to do and go against everything that, that voice inside you says, so that you can live in the world where people just have to do a bunch of stuff that they don't want. That's usually what's meant by discipline. Yeah. Now, not everybody uses it the same way, but that's usually the general gist of it. And so it's not about discipline. It's not about a power struggle. It's not about punishment. Yeah. We want to look at consequences that are natural and or logical. And these are terms that you can Google, that you can get a ton of information on. Yeah. Natural consequences and logical consequences. I'm a huge fan. And the reason is because they, when done correctly, they take the punishment and discipline and sort of power struggle out of the entire equation. So what you want to do is you want to always have the goal in mind in anything that you do, whether you're going into a business meeting or whether you're talking to your child or whether you're talking to your spouse or your partner. You want to have the goal in mind. What is it that I really want to teach my child right now? And sometimes you might have to stop yourself a bit, go off and calm down, because kids can be dicks and they can be infuriating. Absolutely, totally acknowledge that. Yeah, you might need to calm down a little bit, have a little bit of me time. Yeah, and sort of get to the heart of what it is that you're really wanting to convey in all this. You really want to see yourself more as a guide or a teacher to your children rather than as an authoritarian figure that they must learn to obey. Yeah, and so you want to teach your kids how to make good decisions. And in order to make good decisions, in order to learn how to make good decisions, they have to be allowed to make decisions, which means they have to be allowed to sometimes make bad decisions. And I know that you want to protect your little precious baby from anything and everything in the world, yeah? But that doesn't actually serve them. What serves them best is being given a safety net, yeah, by the parents, and whatever freedom is appropriate for their age, yeah, but enough freedom for them to really, yeah, run into a wall every once in a while, and sometimes you're going to have to let them do that. Sometimes you're going to have to watch them run into a wall, and unless their life is in danger, or something is going to go seriously wrong, you have to let them do it, because that's how you learn. Yeah, and they're either going to learn while they're at home with you, or they're going to learn it when they're not at home with you anymore. And I promise you that's harder. It's harder to learn all this as an adult. It's much easier to do when you have that safety net of the parents. So again, you want to teach them about two different kinds of consequences, and you teach them by doing this, by enforcing this. Yeah. So the first one is really easy. Those are natural consequences. Natural consequences are the consequences that are going to naturally happen. They do not need your interference, although sometimes your explanation can be really helpful to help put really two and two together, but they're usually quite obvious if you look for them. So a natural consequence is your child is just struggling and you're trying to get him to put on his coat and it's cold outside and he's like, I'm not putting on my coat. Okay. If you go out in the cold without your coat on, you're going to get cold. And unless you live, someplace where he's going to get frostbite or, do serious damage, let the little fucker get cold. Yeah? He'll learn. And then, resist the urge here to do an I told you so, because that's not helpful. Yeah, and now you're just shaming him for not listening to you, which is not the point. The point is not to get them to listen to you no matter what you say. The point is for them to listen to themselves, for them to learn how to discern information, and for them to learn how to make good decisions. And blindly obeying authority is not something that you really want to teach them. That's not the mindset you want to teach them, which means that you have to allow them to disagree with you sometimes. Yeah. And this is where natural consequences come in. Natural consequences are it's your responsibility to provide good, nutritious, varied food, to have it in the house, to put it on the table. It is not your responsibility to force your child to eat it. Yeah. So barring, of course, any kind of, intolerances or allergies or anything, I'm not talking about that, but, if, all kids go through this where they have a period of time where they just don't want to eat. They don't want to eat. They don't want to eat. You know what? A natural consequence is you don't eat, you go hungry. Yeah. You can spoil your dinner and then it kind of throws off your whole body clock. And if your child is kind of old enough to understand that, again, let them run into that wall. Um, Now, a lot of you might be thinking at this point, well, so if they don't eat dinner, but my child doesn't eat want to eat dinner, but later on he's going to want, the sweets and the treats and all of that. Um, and just as an aside, please don't use food as a treat and don't use food as a punishment. Yeah, let food be food. Um, but if you have a kid like that, then you might want to have a rule in your house that says, you eat dinner, and if you don't eat dinner, I mean, that's fine. We're not going to force you. But yeah, you're not going to get, you're not going to be able to eat candy or whatever later. And that can be a rule, but that is not a natural consequence. The natural consequence is if you don't eat, then you're going to be hungry. Yeah. And by the way, don't make it into like a certain amount of food, like you have to clear your plate or something like that. And a lot less people are doing that these days, but just because as an aside, but kids go through that. They're like, I'm just going to have the candy, and you kind of have to teach them. But you know what? It's also possible to let them have the candy and then get real uncomfortable. And then that's a natural consequence. So your kids the best. You're going to know what works for them, and you can do that trial and error a little bit as well. Yeah. But if you then have the rule that is instituted by you, yeah, that maybe you don't eat dinner, you don't get candy later, or you don't get candy after 9 o'clock or whatever. At all, no matter if you ate or not, because you go jittery and you're driving me crazy and mommy needs a little me time. That is a logical consequence. So it is a consequence that you have imposed. Somebody else has imposed it. There's some interference there. It's not a natural consequence. And a logical consequence should be, the name implies it, logical. And if you want lots of examples, just like I said, Google it. These are terms that are not my terms. I chose these terms because they are Googleable and you can find more information. So what are logical consequences? Well, the way I like to talk about them is they are boundaries. These are your boundaries with your kids, and you want to have boundaries. You want to enforce your boundaries. You want to explain your boundaries. And boundaries, I want to remind you, and if you don't remember this, go back and watch my video on boundaries, yeah? Boundaries are never about control. Yeah? So a boundary is you don't get to do that to me. Control is you don't get to do that. Yeah. And so you want to have boundaries, but your boundaries must make sense. They must be true boundaries, which means they cannot be about control. And you want to watch for that because, boy, kids bring out our control issues in the worst, in the best way. Yeah. And so what is a logical consequence? For example, your kid is throwing an absolute temper tantrum. You're in a safe place. They're not going to hurt themselves. They can wail around on the floor. You just walk away. Go to the next room, walk away. Yeah, if you're in public, don't walk away too far, obviously. But don't give that any energy. Don't try to shut them down. It's not going to work anyway. Don't try to get them to behave. And certainly don't bribe them, because now you're going to have tantrums forever. If that becomes the way that gets them what they want, oh my God. All you got to do is walk away. You're not giving it any attention. This is not going to work for you. If you want to talk to them about it, you can do that later. But in that moment, you're just withdrawing attention, leaving them to it, not judging them, not trying to control it, but you're setting a boundary like, I'm not going to deal with this. Boop, and remove yourself from the situation. Or a logical consequence could be something like they leave their toys all over the place. It makes the house messy. It makes it less pleasant for everyone who's got to stay there. And so if you leave your toys all over the place, they're going to be put in bins and they're going to be put away, and you're not going to get access to them again for a certain amount of time, or until you've done a certain amount of chores or whatever works for your kids. Yeah. But this is a logical consequence. It's not a natural consequence, but it's a logical consequence. And it makes sense because if they leave their toys all over the place, they make the place messy. It makes it unpleasant for everybody, including them, to be in the house. So by them contributing in this way, yeah, they are going to make it more pleasant for everybody. And by taking the toys, if you have to pick them up for them, they're not going to get them back for a while. And they have to sort of pay for them again through some kind of chore that makes sense, maybe cleaning something up. Yeah. This is a logical consequence. This will make sense to a child, and a child will, this will be much, much easier enforceable than an illogical consequence, which is, always illogical consequences always are predicated on the idea of control. Do it because I say so. And here's a really good litmus test. And this isn't just for parents, obviously. Anybody, when you're setting your boundaries or you're getting into some kind of power struggle, if you're not sure if it's a sort of a logical consequence or an illogical consequence, try to explain it. Try to explain it. Why do we have this rule? And if you can't explain it in a logical way, such as we pick up our toys because it makes it more pleasant for everybody to live here and we don't want to live in a messy environment, that's a really good explanation. That's a logical explanation. Yeah? If your explanation comes down to because I said so, that usually means that you don't even know why you do these things. You do that because your parents did it and their parents did it and their parents. That's not a good enough reason anymore. I'm really sorry. These kids born today will crack that wide open. They will stomp all over that. It can't be because I said so. It can't be because we've always done it that way. It has to be because it makes sense, because it is natural or it is logical. So when you do come up with logical consequences, natural consequences you don't really have to come up with. You just have to let them happen. Just don't interfere. Yeah? Kind of sounding familiar? Don't interfere in the process. Yeah? But when you do come up with logical consequences, and of course you have to, oh my God, you want to make them a few things. You want to make them enforceable. Do not lie to your kids. Oh my God, I can't say that often enough. I mean, stop lying to anybody, but do not lie to your kids. So when you say, something like, well, if you don't pipe down back there, I'm going to pull over and I'm going to throw you out of the car and I'm going to drive away. If you have no intention of ever doing that and you're not in a place where you could do that, maybe, like a little ways from your house and it's a safe place for them to walk home and they're old enough to do that or something. But if you have no intention of doing that, don't say that. Yeah? I mean, on the flip side of that, don't make promises to your kids, like even small, insignificant ones that you can't keep. If you're not sure that you can do something, then say, we'll try or maybe, but don't say, we'll definitely do that when you absolutely know you have no intention of doing that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah. Watch yourself. And it's okay to say, I don't know. And it's okay to say, I'm not sure yet, or maybe, and we'll try. And it's okay to say, no, I don't think we can make it. Yeah. You don't have to say yes to everything, but you're really sending, you're not doing yourself or your kids any favors by lying. So if you're going to come up with a consequence, come up with a consequence that fits, that makes sense, and that is enforceable. And just like any boundary, if you're not willing to enforce it, it's not a boundary. Yeah. So think of logical consequences as your boundaries, because that's essentially what they are. The second thing you want to look out for is that you are not expecting them to do it wrong. And oh, this is really prevalent. Parents, grandparents, first of all, I just sit and I watch people, and it's so funny how you can watch the parents just get tenser and tenser, or grandparents get tenser and tenser and tenser, and they're watching the kids and they just know the kid's going to spill the thing or knock over the thing or whatever, and they start reprimanding before the child has even had a chance to do anything. There's no trust. There's no belief that the child will do well, or there's no ability to actually figure it out for themselves. It's just stop it, and they take it away before anything bad can even happen. Yeah, and really, oftentimes it's with totally innocuous things. So we're not talking about firecrackers. They're lighting firecrackers or something. We're talking about they have a glass of milk, or they have a they're talking with their hands and they might knock something over. They need to learn how to watch out, how to control themselves. And how do you do that? You let yourself knock over the glass, and then at some point you realize, oh gosh, and then a natural consequence or logical consequence of that is that you might need to wipe it up. And you might help your child wipe it up if they're really little, but figure it out. Yeah. And so watch for things like saying things like, if you don't do your homework, you're not going to be able to play video games. You're already anticipating them not doing the homework. Yeah. A better way to sort of focus on it, just a small change in direction, but it's, when you finish your homework, then you can go and play video games. So you're anticipating them finishing the homework. Do you see how that is a subtle but very powerful shift? And you want to watch for that, because it's going to be insidious. Don't beat up on yourself every time you find it. Praise yourself when you do find it. Yeah. But you want to, it's really insidious how you might be, just watching for the thing that's wrong, watching for the thing that's wrong, watching for the thing that's wrong. That energy mindset is going to get you kids that even when they're brilliant with other people around you, they just keep messing the same things up and they won't be able to help themselves. Yeah. So a couple of more, I know we're going really long on this video. This is a really big topic, but a couple more things I want to throw in there really quickly. One of them is, as you're dealing with your own shit, don't hide that away from them. Let them see that you have emotions and let them see you handling those emotions. You can even explain all of that to them and you can show them that you're handling it. So, you know what, mommy is really angry right now. And you can explain to them, you know what, I'm not angry at you, but I'm angry right now. And because I'm angry, I'm going to walk away, but I still love you, but I'm going to walk away and I'm going to deal with that anger. And then when you come back and you've dealt with the anger, then you can, say to them that you've done that. And I've had parents whose small children, we're talking about 6, 7, 8 years old, they were sitting there and they were getting mad about something, and the little girl was like, mommy, do you need to go have an anger release? Like, they learn the language, and of course you can give them the chance to do that too, to teach them how to have constructive anger releases and that sort of thing. But don't hide your emotional journey away from them. Explain it to them in whatever way is appropriate for their age. If they have pissed you off, and it is going to happen, or they have made you mad, or they have hurt your feelings, or kids do it all, don't blame them for how you're feeling. And this can be difficult. I get it, because it's like, but they did piss me off. And don't blame them for how you're feeling, but do state the natural consequence of, well, you did this and I felt this way. So a natural consequence in this example would be, you lied to me and now I have a hard time trusting you. And so how do we, rebuild this trust between each other? If they have pissed you off, then deal with your anger. It isn't their fault. I know you want to blame them. Go off and blame them in your mind. Have a constructive anger release. And if you don't know what that is, find it on my blog, Google melodyfletcher.com, and then constructive anger release, and you'll find all kinds of stuff on it. Or get my book. Yeah. But don't blame them or shame them for how you're feeling. Because that's one of the biggest lessons that you're learning. And it isn't about not teaching them consequences. We've talked all video about consequences. It isn't about going out and being dicks to people, because maybe the natural consequences, that is, I don't really want to spend time with you anymore. So let's go for ice cream. Well, you know what? After the way that you treated me today, I don't really feel like getting you ice cream. That I'm not having the warm and fuzzies about this right now. That's not saying I'm blaming you for how I feel, but that is saying here's a consequence. Yeah, a natural consequence of being a dick, and being willing to be the delivery mechanism for other people's, sadness or anger isn't going to necessarily make them want to hang out with you. So who do you want to be in relation to other people is a really good question for them to start asking themselves, and for you to ask of them. The other thing is, and I touched on this before, is know your reasoning for consequences and state your reasoning for consequences. The more logical, the more they make sense. You think things need to make sense to you, they need to make sense to the little ones as well, and more so. Yeah. And if you find yourself getting mad because your kid is arguing with you, check in with yourself and make sure that it isn't because you in fact have no idea why you're setting that rule, and now you've gone into a power struggle. Okay, so I want to finish this video with a resource that is not a vibrational. I'm going to give you the name of a book and an author. And he doesn't write about vibration. He doesn't write about energy. But this is the parenting book that I think I would have written if I'd written a parenting book, or it's really close. It is so aligned, and you can see the alignment in it perfectly if you read it. And that is a book called The Explosive Child, with the author's name is Ross W. Greene, Greene. And I'll put the link below for you so that you can check that out. It is hands down the best parenting book that I've ever read. And it does deal with kids who sort of have these big blow-ups, these really uncontrollable blow-ups. But I think that the techniques in it, and it really is, an excellent book about communication. I think that the techniques in there should be taught to everybody, because adults need to be using these techniques, and kids need to be using these techniques, and they need to be using them with each other, and also, in the workplace. Like, it really teaches you how to communicate in a much more sort of conscious way, which requires you to become conscious first of what's going on. And so I have never found a book that I have recommended this highly to anyone ever as I have this book. It is absolutely excellent. So check that out. Like I said, I'll put the link in the description. Okay, so that was really the 100 miles an hour, as quickly as I could talk to pack it all in, video on parenting, on conscious, high vibrational parenting. Of course, I have a lot more to say on the topic, but boy, this video is already getting long enough. So hopefully this has given you some value or some validation as well. And ask me the questions that I didn't cover in the comments, and that will let me know what I should pack into the next video. That would be really, really great. Okay, until next week, have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week. And I want to thank you personally for bringing your light to the world, and send you smushy, smushy puppy hugs. Bye.